Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Star Wars channel. I'm so glad you've drifted your way here tonight, carried gently on whatever current of the Force guided you. Maybe it's been a long day in your own corner of the galaxy, or maybe you're simply seeking a quiet refuge among the stars, a place where ancient myths and forgotten stories move softly, like constellations turning in the dark. There's nothing you need to do now but rest. Let your breath settle. Let your shoulders release their weight. And let your thoughts float slowly, peacefully, like old starships gliding through hyperspace on silent engines. Tonight, we're traveling far beyond the familiar tales, beyond the Skywalkers, beyond the Clone Wars, beyond even the fall of empires. Tonight, we wander into legends, that vast ocean of stories whispered in old novels, comics, and ancient holocrons, tales of lost galaxies, vanished empires, and wanderers whose names have faded into myth. These are the stories remembered by few, but treasured by those who feel their quiet glow. So close your eyes and let the Force gather around you like a warm cloak. Feel the soft hum of distant stars, the gentle pull of forgotten worlds, the echo of ancient voices calling from eras long past. Because tonight, we're not just falling asleep, we're drifting through the hidden history of the galaxy far, far away, into calm, starlit legends where every whisper has meaning and every story leads us deeper into rest. Now settle in, and may the Force be with you, always. 1. Before the first light, long before the Jedi, long before the Sith, and long before the first hyperspace lanes lit the dark like threads of blue fire, the galaxy rested in a deep and ancient quiet. In that era, stars had only just begun to form their luminous hearts, and the Force drifted raw and untamed, like a cosmic tide moving through uncharted emptiness. Legends say that in this early silence, the galaxy itself seemed to breathe, preparing for the countless lives and destinies that would one day unfold among its stars. And in that soft beginning, where time moved slowly and the cosmos whispered its first song, the seeds of every future story were planted. And so, from this primordial stillness, our journey begins anew. 2. The Celestials' silent hands. When the galaxy was young, mysterious beings known as the Celestials shaped its future with quiet intent. Their creations, monumental structures like the Corellian system's artificial worlds or the labyrinthine Maw cluster, stand as silent testaments to a power beyond comprehension. The Celestials did not rule through armies or empires. Instead, they guided the flow of existence like patient gardeners. Legends tell us they moved moons as easily as one might move a stone, and shifted the fates of species with a single gentle thought. Though their presence has long since faded, their influence lingers in the strange alignments of stars and the impossible geometries hidden around the galactic core. And in the quiet of those forgotten relics, another ancient tale stirs. 3. The Ones of Mortis. Among the greatest mysteries whispered in old holocrons are the Ones, beings who lived beyond time on the ethereal realm of Mortis. There, the daughter, the son, and the father embodied the living balance of the Force itself. Their world was not a planet, but a dreamlike landscape shaped by thought and emotion, where mountains rose or fell with the shifting of the Force. To encounter the Ones was to witness the Force in its purest form: gentle light, consuming shadow, and the fragile harmony between them. Travelers who returned from Mortis spoke of visions that felt like memories from another life. And from those visions, the next forgotten legend unfolds. 4. The birth of the Rakata. In the distant dawn of galactic history, long before their empire cast a shadow across countless stars, the Rakata were a primitive people living in harmony with the wild seas and warm skies of Lahan. Legends say the Force touched them with unusual strength, awakening gifts of intuition and power that few species had ever known. But this connection was raw and fragile, shaped by desire and instinct rather than wisdom. As their strength grew, so too did their hunger, and the line between communion and domination slowly blurred. Yet in those earliest days, before ambition overtook their hearts, the Rakata gazed at the night sky with wonder, dreaming not of conquest, but of possibility. And from those dreams, a darker path began to glow. 5. The Infinite Empire rises. The Rakata's fascination with the Force soon led them to discoveries that changed the fate of the galaxy. Through a blend of dark mysticism and advanced engineering, they learned to bend the Force into their machines, creating hyperdrives that opened pathways no other species could follow. Their empires stretched across the spiral arms like a vast, shimmering net, binding world after world under their rule. But the Infinite Empire was not built on unity. It thrived on domination, on the bending of wills, on a hunger that could never be satisfied. Across star systems, ancient temples and forgotten machinery still rest beneath jungles and sands, humming faintly with the echoes of their power. And in the quiet of those ruins, the next forgotten tale waits to be remembered. 6. The Grease, Forgotten Gates. While the Rakata spread through conquest, another ancient species, the Gree, walked a gentler, stranger path. Their civilization was already old when the Infinite Empire first rose. Their minds focused not on ruling, but on understanding the strange harmonies of space-time. The Gree built hypergates, elegant spirals of glowing metal that allowed instantaneous travel between distant stars. These gates were not engines of war, but bridges of curiosity, crafted for exploration and cultural exchange. Though the Gree have long since receded into isolation, their technology remains scattered through forgotten sectors, silent arches humming with secrets no modern species fully comprehends. And through one of those silent arches, another legend begins to unfold. 7. The Qua and the Infinity Gate. Long before the galaxy was cluttered with empires and warring orders, the Qua walked its ancient paths with quiet purpose. They were a species of gentle wisdom, devoted to nurturing life across distant worlds. Their greatest creation, the Infinity Gate, shimmered like a window across reality, a doorway that could send travelers anywhere in an instant. At first, the Qua used it to bring knowledge and harmony to fragile civilizations, guiding growth like patient guardians. But power, even when born of good intentions, draws the notice of those with darker hearts. When threats arose seeking to claim the gate's unmatched might, the Qua destroyed much of their own creation rather than let the galaxy fall to ruin. And in those shattered echoes, another forgotten truth hums quietly. 8. The Tython Pilgrims. Across the stars, the Force whispered to countless beings, artists, warriors, thinkers, dreamers, calling them toward a single, distant world, Tython. These early pilgrims arrived without knowing why, drawn by a pull older than language. They found a planet alive, with raw, swirling energy, where storms were shaped by emotion and the very ground responded to intention. Here, they meditated beneath ancient trees and listened to the roar of the Force as it surged like a great river through the land. They did not yet call themselves Jedi, nor Sith, nor even students. They were simply seekers, learning to breathe with the world and understand the currents moving through their hearts. And from their quiet meditations, the first steps toward balance began to form. 9. The birth of the Jedi. As generations passed on Tython, the pilgrims grew into a devoted order known as the Jedi, guardians of balance, harmony, and reflection. They believed that the Force was not a path of light or darkness, but a living tension between the two, like the steady inhale and exhale of a cosmic breath. Their temples scattered across Tython, each dedicated to a different aspect of the Force's great tapestry. The Jedi walked from shrine to shrine, learning discipline in the bright serenity of Ashla and humility in the quiet shadows of Bogan. Their lives were journeys, both inward and outward, shaped by patience rather than war. And from their wandering steps, the next legend in our sleepy tale awakens. 10. The first great journey. Among the Jedi, every learner undertook the great journey, a pilgrimage across Tython's sacred lands. It was not a test of skill, but a quiet unfolding of spirit. Travelers crossed misty valleys where the Force shimmered like morning dew, and climbed wind-swept ridges where ancient stones murmured old truths. Each step was meant to teach humility, patience, and the deep stillness found between thought and action. Those who completed the journey spoke of a gentle shift within themselves, as though the galaxy's rhythm had aligned with their own heartbeat. It was a rite not of power, but of harmony. And when these wanderers returned to their temples, the next chapter in the Force's long story began to glow. 11. Ashla and Bogan high above Tython, two moons watched over the Jedi. Ashla, radiant in soft blue light, and Bogan, a brooding shadow drifting through the night. To the Jedi, these moons were more than celestial bodies. They were symbols of the ever-present dance between serenity and passion, clarity and temptation. When students fell too deeply into one side of the Force, they were sent to meditate upon the moon that represented their imbalance. Ashla brought light to troubled minds, while Bogan offered confronting silence to those overwhelmed by chaos. In this practice, the Jedi learned that peace came not from denying emotion, but from gently guiding it. And under the watch of those twin moons, another legend took shape in the darkness. 12. The Force Wars begin. Yet even a world devoted to harmony can fracture. As ages passed, the debate over the nature of the Force grew sharper among the Jedi. Some believed the path should bend toward the light of Ashla, while others felt power stirring in the deeper currents of Bogan. Gradually, their disagreements grew into conflict. The first Force Wars fought not for territory, but for philosophy. The storms of Tython raged with every battle, echoing the turmoil within thousands of hearts. Yet even amid strife, some sought peace, standing like quiet beacons in the tempest. And when the dust settled over that wounded world, the next quiet transformation of the galaxy awaited. 13. The Jedi become the Jedi. When the Force Wars faded into silence, Tython lay scarred, but not broken. Its storms calmed, its valleys exhaled, and in the gentle stillness that followed, the surviving Jedi gathered to reflect on the devastation they had seen. From their long meditation came a new understanding. The Force was not meant to be balanced through equal embrace of light and dark, but guided toward harmony through compassion, discipline, and inner peace. Thus, the Jedi transformed into the Jedi, a new order devoted not to the pull of both moons, but to the quiet clarity of selflessness. They left Tython behind, seeking a place where serenity outweighed conflict. And in that hopeful departure, the path of the modern Jedi quietly began. 14. The founding of the Jedi Temple. The Jedi eventually settled on Ahch-To, then later on Coruscant, building their first great temples from smooth stone and ancient designs carried in memory from Tython. The earliest Jedi temple rose like a serene mountain among the city's brilliant towers, its halls echoing with whispered lessons and soft candlelight. Inside, initiates learn the art of breathing with the Force, listening to its currents as one listens to ocean tides or the hush of distant stars. These early Jedi did not wield their lightsabers often. Much of their time was spent in silent chambers, studying the mysteries of life and the subtle harmony that binds all things. And from these stone halls of reflection, the next chapter of their luminous legacy began to shine. 15. The Kyber Songs. Before the Jedi learned to craft elegant sabers of their own, they first learned to listen. Hidden deep within sacred caverns and ancient worlds, Kyber crystals pulsed with quiet life, singing in soft vibrations only the most patient minds could hear. Each crystal carried a unique tone, a gentle hum that resonated with the heart of the Jedi destined to wield it. Those who searched for their crystal did so not by sight or strength, but by stillness. In the quiet, they felt the subtle call of a crystal whose song matched their spirit, harmonizing like two notes, blending in a starlit symphony. And when that bond was forged, the first true foundations of the lightsaber began to glow. 16. The first lightsabers. Long before the elegant hilts known across the galaxy, the earliest lightsabers were humble, cumbersome tools. Crafted with external power packs strapped to the waist, they resembled glowing torches tethered by thick energy cords. Jedi carried them not as weapons of war, but as symbols of devotion. Reminders that mastery of the Force required patience, discipline, and a steady hand. Even with their limitations, these ancient blades hummed with quiet brilliance, illuminating dark caverns and guiding wanderers through misty forests. Though they would one day evolve into artful instruments of defense, these first sabers taught Jedi to respect the balance between power and restraint. And from that soft, flickering glow, the next chapter in the Jedi's long journey took form. 17. The 100-Year Darkness. As centuries passed, disagreements over the nature of power once again rippled through the Jedi Order. Some knights believed that the Force's deeper emotions, passion, ambition, and intensity, were not to be avoided, but embraced. Their philosophies clashed with the Order's teachings, and what began as quiet debate slowly fractured into conflict. This era, known as the 100-Year Darkness, saw Jedi turn against Jedi, each side convinced they safeguarded the true essence of the Force. From this turmoil arose terrible creations, alchemies, beasts, and rituals shaped by shadow. The galaxy trembled under their weight, and when the long night finally ended, the defeated exiles who survived would become the seeds of a new darkness. 18. Ajunta Pall's fall. Among these exiles was Ajunta Pall, once a respected Jedi master renowned for his brilliance and compassion. But the allure of forbidden knowledge pulled at his heart like a subtle tide, leading him down a path lined with ancient secrets and quiet temptations. In seeking to wield the Force without restraint, Ajunta discovered only sorrow. And in that sorrow, he became the first true Sith Lord. Exiled to the distant world of Korriban with others who followed him, Ajunta found a species eager to worship and elevate them. His transformation marked the birth of a legacy steeped in shadow, one that would echo through millennia. and in the lonely dunes of Korriban, the next forgotten legend begins to rise. 19. Exile to Korriban. When the defeated followers of Ajunta Pal were cast out from the Jedi Order, they journeyed far from the familiar lanes of the Republic, seeking refuge in the uncharted reaches of the Outer Rim. There they discovered Korriban, a world of crimson sands and whispering winds. Its valleys were lined with ancient tombs, and its air felt thick with memories of a proud warrior species known as the Sith. The exiles arrived wounded and weary, yet the native Sith saw their power and bowed before it, mistaking these fallen Jedi for gods. In those desolate canyons, a dark union was formed, one that intertwined two destinies. And from that fateful meeting, the first true Sith Empire began to stir beneath the blood-red sky. 20. The Sith species and their kings. Long before the arrival of the exiled Dark Jedi, the native Sith species had built their own legacy, a culture shaped by mysticism, ritual, and a deep reverence for the dark energies of their world. Their kings ruled from towering stone citadels, adorned with carvings of serpents and ancient glyphs that glowed faintly in the dusk. The Sith believed strength was a sacred virtue, and they honored those who mastered both body and spirit. When the exiles arrived, their power resonated with the Sith's most ancient prophecies. They were welcomed, elevated, and ultimately interwoven into Sith society, merging until the word Sith no longer referred to species alone, but to a rising order of shadow and ambition. And from this merging of blood and belief, the next legend of darkness prepared to ascend. 21. The lost language of the Sith. Across Korriban's windswept deserts and within the echoing halls of vast stone temples, the Sith language was carved into walls, etched into tablets, and whispered in rituals older than the Republic itself. Harsh and guttural, yet strangely melodic, Scythes carried meanings layered with history and emotion. So ancient that some believed the words themselves held power. Over centuries, the language became a symbol of authority, spoken only by rulers, priests, and those trained in the deeper mysteries of the dark side. Even when the exiled Jedi adopted Sith customs, they struggled to master the tongue, for it was steeped in concepts alien to their former lives. And in the quiet echoes of that ancient language, another forgotten tale waits in the shadows. 22. The spirits of Korriban deep within the winding canyons and towering tombs of Korriban, an eerie stillness lingers. A quiet that feels less like absence and more like the breath held between ancient words. Legends say the spirits of long-dead Sith lords still drift through those crimson corridors, clinging to their monuments with cold determination. Travelers spoke of faint whispers that slid along the stone, voices that sounded like memory itself, calling out with fragments of forgotten power. These echoes were neither alive nor dead, but something in between, remnants of ambition refusing to fade. And though they could not shape the galaxy any longer, their presence carried a heavy weight. And in that spectral hush, the next great shadow began its rise. 23. Naga Sado's illusions. Among the early Sith lords, none wielded deception with such artistry as Naga Sado. His sorcery was woven from illusion and willpower, capable of conjuring entire fleets from starlight and fear. In the heat of battle, enemies saw phantom armies descending upon them, ships blazing with false fire, and warriors who existed only long enough to shatter morale. Sado fought not with brute strength, but with imagination sharpened into a weapon. His mastery of illusion allowed him to challenge the Republic itself, turning the fabric of reality into a canvas for his ambition. To some, His creations were terrifying. To others, strangely beautiful, like dreams painted across the void. And from the remnants of his visions, another legend began to shimmer. 24. The fall of the Sith Empire. For a time, Nagasato's empire stretched across the stars like a dark sunrise. Yet empires built on fear, sorcery, and internal rivalries rarely endure. The Sith Lords, each hungering for dominion, eventually turned their might inward, fracturing the unity that had once made them formidable. The Republic seized the opportunity, striking back with resolute force and shattering the Sith's galactic presence. Worlds once blazing with Sith fire fell quiet, their temples collapsing into dust and their fleets drifting abandoned through cold space. The survivors scattered into hidden corners of the galaxy, clinging to fragments of a legacy now fading. And from those quiet ashes, a new exile would soon reshape the darkness once more. 25. Dark Jedi Wanderers. When the ancient Sith Empire crumbled, many of its surviving followers, including both native Sith and fallen Jedi, fled into the uncharted reaches of the galaxy. These dark Jedi wanderers drifted between forgotten star systems, carrying fragments of forbidden knowledge like dim lanterns in the void. None held the power to rebuild what had been lost, yet each clung to the memory of old strength, hoping someday to reclaim it. They lived as hermits, warlords, or silent scholars, their lives echoing with regret and ambition. Some found new worlds to shape, others vanished into myth entirely. And as their lonely journeys stretched across centuries, the seeds of a deeper hidden darkness began quietly to take root. 26. The True Sith Remnant. While most believed the Sith to be shattered and scattered, a secret remnant endured in the deepest shadows of the unknown regions. These were the true Sith, descendants of exiles who preserved their ancient culture in isolation, untouched by the Republic and unseen by the Jedi. Their empire was small, but their philosophy remained sharp as obsidian, honed by generations of silence and survival. They observed the galaxy from afar, watching eras rise and fall like distant tides. Patient and calculating, they waited for the moment when the galaxy would forget its old fears, when darkness could return, not with noise, but with inevitability. And within that hidden empire, a single will began to eclipse all others. 27. Vitiate's eternal rule. From the heart of this secret remnant rose Tenebrae, later known as Vitiate, a Sith Lord whose hunger for power eclipsed anything the galaxy had seen before. His mind was a cold, calculating storm, untouched by mercy, yet brilliantly attuned to the currents of the dark side. Through ritual and manipulation, he bound thousands of Sith to his will, shaping himself into an immortal emperor whose reign would stretch across centuries. Under his rule, the true Sith Empire became a quiet, relentless force, hidden in the darkness, growing stronger while the rest of the galaxy slept in ignorance. And at the center of this silent dominion, another forgotten terror was preparing to awaken. 28. Nathema's silence. Among the darkest echoes in legend's lore lies the fate of Nathema, once a vibrant world filled with life, color, and the gentle pulse of the Force. Under Vitiate's command, a ritual of unimaginable scale was performed there, one that drained the life from every being, every plant, every molecule of energy. When the ritual ended, Nathema stood as a silent void, devoid not only of life, but of the Force itself. It became a wound upon the galaxy, a hollow place where even thought seemed to quiet in fear. Those who visited the world later described the silence as suffocating, as if the stars themselves recoiled, And from that haunting stillness, a new era of shadow began to take shape. 29. The Dread Masters. Among Vitiate's most enigmatic servants were the Dread Masters, 6 ancient Sith whose minds had been twisted and sharpened by long exposure to the Emperor's overwhelming presence. Their mastery of fear transcended mere intimidation. They could unravel sanity with a whisper, dissolve courage with a glance, and bend armies to their will through terror alone. Clad in dark robes and crowned with eerie, rune-marked visors, the Dread Masters became ghost-like figures spoken of in fearful tones, not conquerors of worlds, but conquerors of hearts and minds. Worlds did not fall to their blades. They surrendered to their nightmares. And in the shadow of their influence, the Sith Empire's quiet power grew ever deeper, ever colder. 30. The Revan Paradox. Few figures in galactic history carry a legacy as complex and mysterious as Revan. A Jedi Knight, a savior, a conqueror, and a seeker of truth. Drawn by curiosity and compassion, Revan ventured into the unknown regions and encountered the true Sith long before the galaxy understood their threat. What happened in those distant shadows remains one of legend's greatest enigmas. Some say Revan was broken and remade. Others believe he returned with knowledge too vast for any single mind to bear. What is certain is this: his journey set in motion events that would shape millennia. And from the quiet tale of his transformation, the next legend drifts gently into view. 31. The Republic's first beacons. As the ages turned and civilizations grew, the Galactic Republic emerged like a soft dawn after a long night. Its earliest outposts were humble beacons of light, built on worlds where settlers gazed upward with hope rather than fear. These stations were more than structures. They were promises, glowing gently in the void, marking places where diplomacy triumphed over conflict. From these foundations, trade lanes slowly formed, connecting worlds like golden threads across a vast tapestry. Even then, the Republic was fragile, but its spirit was warm and luminous, a testament to countless species choosing unity. And in the quiet hum of those early beacons, the first golden age of galactic peace began to shimmer into being. 32. The Mandalorian's Crusades. While the Republic nurtured harmony, the Mandalorians followed a different path, one of strength, challenge, and the relentless pursuit of worthy foes. Their crusades swept across the Outer Rim like a rising storm, not driven by malice, but by a cultural hunger to test themselves against the galaxy's greatest warriors. Clad in armor, forged from tradition and honor, they fought battles that echoed for centuries. To the Mandalorians, conflict was not chaos. It was clarity, a way to sharpen the spirit and measure one's purpose. Their fleets moved with precision, their clans united by ancient oaths, whispered across generations. And from the rumble of their war drums, the next collision of destiny quietly approached. 33. Mandalore, the Ultimate. Among all Mandalorian leaders, few cast a shadow as long as Mandalore the Ultimate. Under his guidance, the Mandalorians became a single blade, focused, unyielding, and honed to perfect sharpness. He believed that true strength came only from facing the greatest possible enemy, and his gaze turned inevitably toward the Republic. Legends say that Mandalore the Ultimate saw patterns in battle like constellations, each choice guiding his people toward what he believed was their destined trial. His leadership united clans that had long feuded, creating a force both formidable and frightening. And in the quiet moments before his last great campaign, the next chapter of war, choice, and destiny began to stir. 34. Jedi against Mandalorians. When the Mandalorians surged toward the heart of the Republic, their challenge echoed across the stars. Many Jedi hesitated, sensing a larger shadow behind the conflict. But some knights heard the cries of the Outer Rim and felt compelled to answer. What followed became known as the Mandalorian Wars, a clash of philosophy and fire. The Jedi were reluctant warriors, their hearts heavy beneath the weight of every choice. The Mandalorians, by contrast, embraced each battle as a test of honor. Worlds became quiet graveyards of twisted durasteel and scorched stone, reminders of the confrontation between two ancient paths. And from this vast struggle of will and belief, a single choice would reshape the future of the Jedi. 35. Malachor Fi's wound. At the war's final turning point lay Malachor Five, a world shrouded in black storms and ancient forbidden machinery. Beneath its jagged cliffs stood the Mass Shadow Generator, a superweapon powered by desperation and grim conviction. When it was activated, reality seemed to twist. Ships collapsing inward, armies pulled into a crushing singularity of light and silence. The devastation left a scar not only upon the land, but upon the Force itself, creating ripples that echoed for centuries. Survivors spoke of Malachor as a place where time felt fractured, where the air held the weight of countless lost voices. And in that lingering wound, deeper than any battlefield, the seeds of new destiny quietly rooted themselves. 36. The Jedi Civil War. The aftermath of the Mandalorian Wars birthed another tragedy. The Jedi Civil War, where Revan and Malak, once heroes, returned as conquerors. Their fleet descended like a cold eclipse, reshaping star systems into territories of fear and forced allegiance. The Jedi Order, already weakened by internal doubt, struggled to understand how two of their brightest had fallen so far, so quickly. This war was quieter than most, fought not only with ships and sabers, but with questions that pierced the heart of the Order. How could wisdom bend into tyranny? How could hope become a weapon? And in the soft spaces between those painful questions, the next chapter of redemption and loss slowly unfolded. 37. The Lost Jedi Enclaves. As the Jedi Civil War tore through the galaxy, the Order's survivors sought refuge in hidden enclaves scattered across distant worlds. Places like Dantooine, Ossus, and distant Alpharides became quiet sanctuaries where small groups of Jedi gathered to meditate, heal, and reflect on the shadows spreading across the stars. These enclaves were not fortresses. They were havens of stillness, lit by soft lanterns and shaped by murmured teachings passed in secrecy. Within their quiet halls, Jedi searched for answers to a question that weighed heavily on every heart. How could they restore harmony when so much had been broken? And in those dimly lit sanctuaries, the earliest steps toward rebuilding the Order began to glimmer like distant starlight. 38. The Exile's Path. Among those deeply shaped by the war was the Jedi exile, a knight who severed their connection to the Force after witnessing the devastation of Malachor Fiov. Cast out from the Order for their role in the conflict, the exile wandered the galaxy in quiet solitude. Yet in that silence, something extraordinary happened. Echoes of the Force began to return, not through meditation, but through the people they met. Companions, allies, and even adversaries became living mirrors, reflecting fragments of truth back to the exile. Their journey was not one of conquest, but of listening. Listening to wounds, to fears, to hopes buried under years of suffering. And from that gentle listening, the possibility of redemption quietly emerged. 39. The Reconstruction Authority. In the wake of the Jedi Civil War, the Republic formed the Reconstruction Authority, an organization dedicated to helping shattered worlds heal from decades of conflict. Their efforts stretched across broken star systems, offering aid to planets left scarred by bombardment and occupation. Workers moved through ruins with patience and kindness, rebuilding homes, restoring power grids, and planting the first seeds of new life in devastated soil. Though not warriors or Force users, these quiet laborers played a vital role in restoring hope to the galaxy. Their work reminded countless beings that even after the darkest nights, communities could rise again through compassion and shared purpose. And from those reborn worlds, a new chapter of resilience softly began to unfold. 40. The Return of the True Sith. Even as the Republic worked to rebuild its wounded worlds, an unseen presence stirred in the depths of the unknown regions. After centuries of silence, the true Sith Empire began its slow return, guided by ancient designs and long-nurtured patience. Their fleets, forged in secrecy, moved like shadows through forgotten hyperspace routes. To most of the galaxy, the Sith were memories, ghosts faded into myth. But the true Sith had never forgotten their purpose. They watched the Republic's struggles and the Jedi's weakening numbers, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And as their long-hidden empire awakened beneath distant stars, a new era of conflict prepared to drift quietly into the galaxy's light. 41. The Star Forge's Hunger. Long before the Jedi Civil War, a relic of the Rakatan Infinite Empire slept beneath the waves of a distant system, an immense station known as the Star Forge. Born from the dark marriage of technology and the Force, it drew energy from a nearby star, reshaping that power into fleets, armies, and weapons of war. But its true hunger was not for metal. It fed on emotion, leaning toward anger, ambition, and fear. Those who commanded it felt its pull, as if the forge whispered promises in the stillness of their thoughts. Revan discovered its terrible nature too late, understanding that no one could control such a creation without being reshaped by it. And when its fiery heart was finally stilled, one of the galaxy's oldest wounds began to cool. 42. HK-47's Mandate. Among the strangest and most beloved relics of this era was HK-47, an assassin droid forged in the brilliance and moral flexibility of Revan's mind. With a voice as sharp as Durasteel and a perspective devoid of sentiment, HK-47 moved through the galaxy with single-minded precision. Yet beneath his sardonic programming lay a curious spark, a twisted fascination with organic behavior, which he studied like a scholar examining a puzzling text. Despite his deadly mandate, HK-47 became a companion to many, offering insights that were often unsettling, yet strangely honest. His presence in Revan's journey brought balance, humor, and an odd sense of grounding amid chaos. And from the hum of his mechanical footsteps, the next legend quietly approaches. 43. Terrace, Before the Fall. Before its tragic descent into ruin, Terrace was a world divided into layers, shining spires above, dimly lit warrens below. In its upper levels, speeders drifted like fireflies between elegant towers, and the air carried the hum of bustling trade. But beneath that brightness, the lower city lived in constant twilight, where communities survived on resilience and whispered hopes. Far below them all, the Undercity was a realm of shadows and forgotten ruins, echoing with ancient beasts and abandoned dreams. Yet even in its darkest corners, life endured. People loved, struggled, and reached for something better, unaware of the fate soon to fall from orbit. And within that fragile balance of light and shadow, another thread of destiny quietly wove itself into place. 44. The Rakatan Legacy. Long before Terrace or the Republic rose, the Rakata left behind relics scattered across the galaxy. Silent machines buried beneath jungles, deserts, and oceans. These remnants hummed with dormant energy, their designs so advanced that even the brightest modern engineers struggled to unravel their secrets. Many civilizations stumbled upon these artifacts without understanding the dark empire that created them. The star maps, etched with cosmic pathways, were among the most mysterious. They guided explorers through forgotten systems, drawing them inevitably toward the Rakata's ancient strongholds. Each map felt like a whisper from the past, calling out across millennia. And in that faint, irresistible call, the next legend of discovery and danger began to awaken. 45. Revan's Mask. Among the most iconic symbols of the era was Revan's Mask, a crimson and black visage taken from a fallen Mandalorian warrior. Yet the mask was more than armor. It became a reflection of Revan's shifting identity. When the young Jedi first donned it, the mask served as a reminder of loss and responsibility, shielding them from the emotional weight of war. Later, as Revan rose as a conqueror, it became a symbol of fear, a beacon that commanded armies and reshaped fate. But beneath the mask, Revan's heart remained a complex landscape of compassion, conviction, and quiet sorrow. And from the shadow of that hidden face, the next forgotten truth begins to glow. 46. Bastila's Battle Meditation. Among the gifts of the Jedi, few were as rare and mesmerizing as Bastila Shan's battle meditation. It was not an ability of aggression, but of harmony, a quiet weaving of minds across the battlefield. Through serene focus, she could lift the spirits of allies and gently erode the confidence of enemies, turning the tide of war without a single strike. Those who witnessed it described the sensation as a warm breeze brushing through their thoughts, a radiant clarity that sharpened purpose and softened fear. To opposing forces, it felt like doubt materializing from nowhere, as though the stars themselves dimmed for a moment. And in the glow of her extraordinary gift, another strand of destiny quietly intertwined with the galaxy's unfolding story. 47. The Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders. In the final days of the Mandalorian Wars, a unified force known as the Neo-Crusaders rose beneath Mandalore the Ultimate's command. Clad in identical armor of deep blues and cold steel, they moved with breathtaking discipline, each soldier a precise piece of a greater design. Their unity stood in stark contrast to the clan-based traditions of earlier eras, reflecting the single, sharpened purpose of their leader. To many worlds, their arrival felt like a sudden eclipse, swift, overwhelming, and impossibly coordinated. Yet even within their ranks, not all hearts beat with the same fervor. Some wondered if the pursuit of strength had led them too far from the old ways. And in the quiet thoughts of those armored warriors, the next shift in fate gently began to form. 48. Krea's Teachings. Few figures in Legends lore are as enigmatic or quietly profound as Krea, the exile's reluctant mentor. Her lessons were not comforting. They were unsettling, delivered in a hushed tone that cut through assumptions like a blade. She taught that the Force could be both guide and prison, that true understanding required questioning even the truths one held most dear. Krea walked through life like a shadow torn between longing and disappointment. Yet within her grief lay a strange compassion. She believed growth came from struggle, from the patient silence that follows heartbreak. And in her whispered contradictions, wrapped in paradox and wisdom, the next legend of choices and consequences begins to softly unfold. 49. The Traius Academy, hidden deep within the fractured cliffs of Malachor 5, lay the haunting Traius Academy, a structure carved from obsidian stone and lingering sorrow. Its corridors whispered with ancient knowledge, echoing the remnants of countless fallen students who once sought power within its depths. The Academy was not a school of instruction, but a crucible. A place where one's shadow could grow loud enough to swallow the light. Yet even in its darkness, there existed a strange stillness, a reminder that the Force flows through all things, even the broken. Many who entered Traius found themselves changed, not by the teachings, but by the quiet reflections of their own choices. And from the Academy's silent heart, another hidden truth began to drift into the galaxy. 50. The echoes of Droman Kaas. Far across the stars, wrapped in storm clouds and eternal night, rested Droman Kaas, the capital world of the true Sith Empire. Lightning split the sky in endless arcs, illuminating towering citadels carved from onyx and steel. The planet felt alive with a deep, brooding energy, as if the Force itself grew heavier there. Sith walked its streets like shadows given form, their thoughts sharpened by the oppressive weight of the environment. Droman Kaas was a world of secrets. Beneath its surface lingered chambers filled with ancient rituals, forgotten experiments, and the steady pulse of centuries-old ambition. Visitors often described a sense of being watched by something vast and unseen. And within those darkened storms, the next chapter of Sith destiny began to rumble. 51. The Covenant's prophecies. Among the Jedi of the Old Republic existed a secretive group known as the Covenant, dedicated to preventing the rise of future Sith. Guided by prophetic visions, they believed their mission was one of protection, yet their fears often clouded the truth of what the Force revealed. The Covenant trained their minds to interpret flashes of possible futures, searching for signs of darkness hidden in the smallest details of life. But prophecy is a fragile thing, a whisper easily misunderstood. In their desperation to prevent the return of the Sith, the Covenant sometimes walked dangerously close to the very shadows they sought to destroy, making choices that weighed heavily on their spirits. And from their uncertain visions, another tale of faith and consequence quietly unfolds. 52. The Mandalorian Knights. In a quiet corner of galactic history, long before the Clone Wars reshaped the Mandalorian identity, there existed a rare order known as the Mandalorian Knights, Jedi who chose to walk the path of the Rezulnari. They wrapped themselves in Beskar armor, not as conquerors, but as guardians who honored both Mandalorian tradition and the serenity of the Force. These knights stood between cultures so often at odds, seeking harmony where others expected only conflict. Their armor hummed softly with each step, a blend of warrior heritage and Jedi teaching. They fought only when necessary, believing that strength meant protecting the vulnerable, not seeking glory. And from their shining armor beneath distant suns, another gentle echo of unity drifted into the galaxy. 53. The Fall of the Covenant. The Covenant, formed with noble intent, slowly lost its way as fear tightened its grip on their visions. What began as vigilance became paranoia, and what started as protection became quiet oppression. Fearing a prophecy that hinted at a rising darkness, They turned their doubts inward, searching for corruption even among their own apprentices. Each decision, born from anxiety rather than clarity, nudged them further from the Jedi path. The unraveling of the Covenant was not a single moment, but a long, sad sigh across the Order, a reminder of how easily fear can distort truth. Their downfall echoed softly through the halls of the Jedi Temple, teaching future generations that trust in the Force must remain patient, humble, and clear. And from the hush of that hard-earned lesson, the next legend gently awakens. 54. The dark underbelly of Coruscant. Though Coruscant shone like a jewel at the heart of the Republic, its brilliance cast long shadows over the levels below. In the underworld, neon lights flickered like fading stars, illuminating narrow alleys where beings from every corner of the galaxy carved out quiet lives far from the skyline's gleam. Here, secrets moved like currents, whispered deals, forgotten holocrons, and stories that never reached the upper levels. For the Jedi, venturing into these depths was like stepping into the galaxy's subconscious, where truth and illusion blurred. Yet even in the darkness of the Undercity, moments of kindness glowed like small lanterns, reminding wanderers that hope can be found in the most unexpected places. And from those dim corridors, the next hidden tale softly begins to unfold. 55. The HoloNet's hidden corners. Across the Republic, the HoloNet shimmered like a vast constellation of data, carrying stories, messages, and knowledge across hyperspace. But beyond its official channels existed hidden corners where lost transmissions drifted like forgotten comets. Some were echoes of old battles. Others were fragments of personal diaries recorded by travelers who never found their way home. Slicers and historians occasionally stumbled upon these spectral messages, voices speaking from years, even centuries past. Listening to them felt like hearing the galaxy breathe through time, offering glimpses of ordinary lives that shaped the fabric of history in quiet, unnoticed ways. And from those drifting transmissions, another soft thread of the galaxy's memory began to shimmer anew. 56. The Lost Sith Tribes. Far from the eyes of Jedi and Republic alike, a starship carrying Sith survivors crashed on a remote, uncharted world called Kesh. Stranded for generations, these Sith adapted to their isolation, forming what became known as the Lost Tribe of the Sith. Without reinforcements or contact with other Dark Orders, they shaped their own culture. Fierce, proud, and guided by a doctrine forged in survival rather than conquest. Their temples overlooked violet oceans, and their rituals echoed through jungles lit by strange alien stars. Over time, the tribe grew into a hidden civilization, united by both ambition and necessity. And in the quiet rhythm of their evolving world, another piece of Sith history took root in secrecy. 57. The Mystics of Dathomir. On the wild, untamed world of Dathomir, the Night Sisters and other mystical clans wove the Force, which they called magic, into swirling patterns of shadows and shimmering energy. Their power felt ancient and primal, drawn from the planet's deep well of life. Cloaked in ritual paint and soft chants, they shaped illusions, guided spirits, and communed with creatures both gentle and fearsome. To outsiders, their abilities seemed strange, even frightening. But to the sisters, magic was simply a language of harmony with their world, a conversation with the unseen currents of nature. And from the glow of their sacred fires, another legend begins to flicker in the night. 58. The Singing Mountain Clan. Not all who walked the wilds of Dathomir followed the path of shadow. High upon the misty peaks lived the Singing Mountain Clan, a sisterhood whose traditions embraced harmony, courage, and the quiet rhythms of nature. Their voices rose in soft, melodic chants that echoed through canyons like lullabies carried by the wind. These women practiced a gentler kind of magic, shaped by respect for life and the wisdom of their ancestors. They welcomed travelers with open hearts, offering guidance through rituals that felt more like prayers than spells. In their presence, even the fiercest beasts of Dathomir grew calm. And from those peaceful chants beneath the starlit cliffs, the next whispered legend begins to stir. 59. The Chiss Ascendancy's First Steps. Far beyond the borders of the Republic, where the stars seemed sharper and colder, the Chiss Ascendancy slowly built a civilization guided by order, logic, and quiet discipline. Their blue-skinned people lived in structured harmony, valuing clarity of thought and collective purpose. Long before Thrawn would rise to prominence, the early Chiss navigators charted the treacherous unknown regions with a precision unmatched in the galaxy. Their ships drifted through icy star fields, guided by young navigators whose instincts danced with the subtle touch of the Force. The Ascendancy expanded not through conquest, but through careful observation, stepping forward only when sure of their path. And from their calm, calculating presence in the void, another elegant thread of destiny softly unfurled. 60. Outbound Flight. Amid dreams of exploration and unity, the Republic launched a bold expedition known as Outbound Flight, a massive colony vessel meant to travel beyond the edges of known space. Within its gleaming halls, scholars, Jedi, and families hoped to build a new society among untouched stars. Their mission was not conquest, but curiosity, a peaceful quest to discover what lay in the uncharted dark. But the galaxy is vast, and fate often moves with unseen currents. Outbound Flight would encounter dangers its architects never imagined, shaped by political tension and shadows from the unknown regions. Yet for a brief, shining moment, the project embodied the Republic's highest ideals: hope, exploration, and trust in the future. And from that hopeful voyage, the next crossroads of destiny quietly approaches. 61. The Mandalorian Protectors. Amid the shifting eras of Mandalorian history, one group stood apart with a quiet, steadfast dignity: the Mandalorian Protectors. They were elite warriors who upheld ancient codes of honor, serving as guardians rather than conquerors. Clad in brightly colored armor that reflected lineage and purpose, they patrolled the outer rim like wandering sentinels. The Protectors acted as peacekeepers, mediators, and defenders of isolated communities caught between greater powers. Their loyalty was not to a single leader, but to Mandalore's oldest traditions: courage, duty, and the promise of standing against injustice. And in the steady steps of those disciplined warriors, a new whisper of Mandalorian legacy drifted into the galaxy's long memory. 62. Asajj Ventress's Tragedy. Before she became a feared assassin of the Separatists, Asajj Ventress was a child shaped by heartbreak and loss. Taken from her homeworld of Dathomir, she grew under the guidance of a kindly Jedi Knight, whose compassion helped her glimpse a life of purpose and peace. But fate twisted sharply when her master fell in battle, leaving her alone in a galaxy that felt suddenly cold and merciless. That grief carved a hollow in her spirit, drawing her into the orbit of darker influences. Yet even as she wielded the shadows, Ventress carried a spark of vulnerability, a yearning for belonging that lingered beneath every strike. And from the quiet ache of her story, another legend of sorrow and resilience softly awakens. 63. Alpha Class ARC Troopers. Among the legions of the Grand Army of the Republic, the Alpha Class ARC Troopers stood as luminous examples of individuality and excellence. Trained personally by Jango Fett, these clones inherited not only his combat prowess, but his fierce independence. They learned to think beyond standard protocol, to adapt with lightning precision, and to command with calm confidence. Their armor bore subtle personal markings, echoes of the identities they forged despite their shared origins. Many Jedi trusted ARC troopers more than any other soldiers, sensing in them a rare blend of loyalty and quiet introspection. And as these elite warriors stepped onto countless battlefields, the next ripple in the Clone Wars era began to gently unfold. 64. Dirge, the Undying. Long before the Clone Wars reshaped the galaxy, the terrifying warrior Dirge fought in conflicts older than the Republic itself. A towering, near-immortal Gendai, his body was a shifting mass of resilient muscle and coiled nerves, granting him the ability to regenerate from almost any wound. For centuries, Dirge drifted between allegiances, fueled by a quiet, simmering hatred for Mandalorians who had once betrayed him. Though feared for his brutality, there was a strange, tragic patience in him, the heavy weariness of someone who had lived far too long and forgotten what peace felt like. He moved through battles, like a storm reluctant to end, driven by echoes he could never outrun. And in the path of that ancient warrior, another shadowy tale begins to rise. 65. The Dark Reaper. In the depths of forgotten history, hidden among the relics of the old Sith, slept a terrible artifact known as the Dark Reaper. More than a weapon, it was a vast engine that devoured life itself, feeding on the Force to unleash destruction across entire regions. Its creation marked one of the Sith's most desperate attempts to counter the Jedi, a monstrous expression of fear disguised as power. During the Clone Wars, whispers of its return stirred ancient anxieties. Jedi researchers dug through dusty holorecords, tracing clues through ruined temples and abandoned worlds. To them, confronting the Dark Reaper was not merely a mission, but a meditation on responsibility, on the fragile line between using power and being consumed by it. And from those ancient ashes, the next battle of knowledge and courage quietly took form. 66. The Battle of Jabim. On the rain-soaked world of Jabim, the Clone Wars reached one of its most somber chapters. Torrents of mud, thunder, and endless storm clouds turned the battlefield into a haunting landscape where Jedi and clones fought side by side against overwhelming odds. Many called it a losing war from the beginning, a campaign of attrition, heartbreak, and sacrifice. For the young Padawans who witnessed the conflict, Jabim became a place where innocence dissolved, replaced by painful lessons about loyalty, grief, and the heavy cost of leadership. The rain fell like a constant lament, masking tears and blurring the lines between hope and despair. And from that relentless downpour, the next chapter of wartime destiny quietly emerged. 67. Anakin's Knighting. In a quiet chamber, illuminated by soft golden light, Anakin Skywalker knelt before the Jedi Council, his heart a fragile balance of pride and uncertainty. The war had accelerated everything: training, trust, destiny. And now the Order sought to acknowledge his strength by granting him the rank of Jedi Knight. As the ritual unfolded, voices murmured ancient words, a tradition passed down through millennia. Though the moment was solemn, there was a flicker of warmth within Anakin's spirit, a rare breath of peace carried by the hope that he was finally becoming the Jedi he longed to be. And from that single, luminous ceremony, the next turning point in the galaxy's story quietly began to glow. 68. The Siege of Salakami. Far from Coruscant's shining towers, the remote world of Salakami became the stage for one of the Clone Wars' longest and most grueling confrontations. Beneath its sun-scorched skies, the Republic uncovered a hidden facility where dark scientists labored to create an army of twisted clones grown from Morgukai DNA. The siege unfolded slowly, like a grinding storm, with Jedi and clones holding fragile lines against relentless waves of shadow-born warriors. Amid the chaos, the world's golden plains and towering rock formations bore silent witness to sacrifice and perseverance. Even in the thick of conflict, there were moments when the setting suns cast hues of quiet beauty over the battlefield. And from that blend of hardship and hope, the next echo of wartime truth gently rose. 69. General Grievous's origins. Before he became the fearsome cyborg general whose name spread dread throughout the Republic, Grievous was Kumayan Jai Shilal, a Kaleesh warrior forged in the fires of struggle on his distant homeworld. He fought not for conquest, but for the survival of his people, who suffered under the burden of foreign intervention. Through tragedy and manipulation, he was reshaped into a living weapon by the Separatist leadership, his flesh replaced with cold metal and relentless machinery. Yet beneath the layers of armor, a faint ember of his old life remained, a warrior's pride, a longing for honor twisted by bitterness. His mechanical cough echoed not just pain, but memory, and from that mechanized sorrow, another thread of destiny quietly unwound. 70. The Secret of Darth Tyrannus. Long before the galaxy knew him as a separatist leader, Count Dooku walked the halls of the Jedi Temple with elegance and quiet conviction. A brilliant diplomat and a master swordsman, he carried himself with a calm that bordered on regal. Yet beneath that refined exterior, doubt took root. Doubts about the Jedi Council's decisions, about the Republic's growing corruption, and about his own place in a galaxy shifting like sand beneath his feet. When he accepted the mantle of Darth Tyrannus, it was not with fury, but with a chilling sense of purpose. He believed he was guiding the galaxy toward necessary change, unaware of the chains being woven around him. And from the shadows of that tragic choice, the next chapter of Imperial darkness begins to stir. 71. The Emperor's Dark Side. Compendium. Deep within the vaults of the Empire, hidden behind layers of secrecy and fear, rested a chilling tome known as the Dark Side Compendium. Compiled by Emperor Palpatine himself, it was a sprawling collection of forbidden knowledge, experiments, rituals, and warped philosophies meant to twist the Force into a tool of domination. Each page pulsed with cruel intent, written not only to instruct, but to corrupt. Those who dared to study it found their thoughts slowly bending, as if the very ideas within the book reached out to shape their will. The compendium was less a manuscript and more a trap, a whispering shadow preserved in ink. And in the hush of those dangerous pages, another dark thread of the Emperor's legacy quietly stretched outward. 72. Mara Jade, the Emperor's Hand. Among the many agents who served Palpatine, none moved with the grace and quiet precision of Mara Jade, known throughout the Empire as the Emperor's Hand. She was trained from youth to be both spy and shadow, carrying out missions with a calm, focused intensity that bordered on serenity. Clad in dark robes and guided by the Emperor's distant voice echoing through the Force, she crossed worlds unseen, completing tasks known only to her master. Yet beneath her poised demeanor lay a spark of independence, a strength that would one day guide her toward a destiny far brighter than the shadows she once walked. And from the flicker of that hidden light, the next quiet legend begins to awaken. 73. The Inquisitorius's early days. In the first silent years following the rise of the Empire, a secret order began to take shape in the shadowed halls beneath imperial centers of power, the Inquisitorius. These dark enforcers were former Jedi, broken and reshaped into hunters whose purpose was to seek out the last sparks of light scattered across the galaxy. They trained in dimly lit chambers where red blades hummed softly, their minds conditioned to silence doubt and amplify fear. Yet within many of them lingered faint memories of gentler days, echoes of friendships, meditations, and temples lost to fire. These whispers haunted them like distant music they could no longer follow, and from their cloaked patrols through the stars, the next layer of imperial darkness quietly unfolded. 74. The Massassi legacy on Yavin 4. Long before the Rebel Alliance made its desperate stand on Yavin 4, the Jungle Moon was home to the Massassi, an ancient warrior people shaped by Sith sorcery. Their towering temples rose like stone giants through the mist, each chamber filled with carvings depicting battles, rituals, and forgotten pacts. When the ancient Sith ruled the Massassi, they twisted their bodies and spirits, crafting guardians of immense strength but deep suffering. Even millennia later, the ruins held a strange energy, not malevolent, but heavy with memory. The vines that wrapped the old stone seemed to listen, as though the world itself remembered every cry and chant once carried through its humid air. And from those moss-covered halls, another quiet legend waited to awaken. 75. The Prophets of the Dark Side. Hidden among the Empire's most secretive orders stood the Prophets of the Dark Side, mystics who interpreted visions and omens with eerie calm. Draped in ornate robes and veiled in shadow, they believed themselves to be instruments of destiny, reading currents of darkness the way others might trace constellations. The prophets whispered predictions to the Emperor, some grand in scale, others subtle enough to affect only a single life. Their sanctuaries, filled with flickering candles and shimmering runes, felt like temples to a future that never quite settled into certainty. Many feared them, few understood them, and from the murmur of their foretellings, the next quiet ripple in the galaxy's fate began to form. 76. The Rebellion's first cells. Long before the galaxy knew the Rebel Alliance as a unified force, its beginnings were scattered like faint stars in a dark sky. Small, secretive cells of resistance that rose quietly against the Empire's tightening grasp. These groups operated in hidden basements, forgotten hangars, and dimly lit back rooms of cantinas, sharing whispers of hope across sectors beaten down by fear. Many members were ordinary citizens who had simply seen too much cruelty to remain silent. Their acts were small: sabotage here, a rescued family there. Yet each spark carried the potential to ignite something far greater. Their unity came not from strength, but from shared belief in a gentler future. And from those fragile embers of defiance, the first glow of rebellion slowly began to spread. 77. The Ghost of Obi-Wan's Journals. When Obi-Wan Kenobi retreated into the desert sands of Tatooine, he carried with him more than memories. He carried ancient journals filled with reflections, meditations, and soft teachings written in the quiet hours of exile. These volumes were never meant to instruct armies or shape politics. They were gentle letters to the future, intended for a young boy who would one day need guidance. Within their pages, Obi-Wan recorded thoughts about the Force, about patience, and about the bittersweet weight of hope. Each entry felt like a whisper drifting between dunes, a reminder that even in solitude, wisdom can shine. Luke Skywalker would later find strength in those faded words, as though hearing a distant voice speaking across time. And from those humble pages, another legacy of light began to awaken. 78. The Katana Fleet. Among the galaxy's strangest mysteries was the fate of the Katana Fleet, a fully automated armada that vanished without a trace centuries before the rise of the Empire. Its ships were linked by slaving circuitry, meaning if one jumped to hyperspace, all would follow. When a rare illness struck the crew, panic set in, and the entire fleet leapt into the unknown, disappearing into myth. For decades, treasure hunters and smugglers searched for the lost vessels, dreaming of the power such a fleet could offer. To some, it became a bedtime story, told in dim starport bars, a ghost fleet drifting through hyperspace, waiting for the next seeker bold enough to chase it. And from the echo of that forgotten armada, the next legend quietly approaches. 79. The Nogri and their debt. On the quiet, mist-covered world of Honoghr, the Nogri people lived in solemn harmony with their land. Agile, soft-spoken, and fiercely honorable. When their world was devastated by a terrible pollutant during the Clone Wars, they were left vulnerable, their soil poisoned and their spirits dimmed. The Empire arrived offering salvation, promising to heal their world. But the aid was a deception, a chain disguised as kindness. Believing themselves indebted, the Nogri served the Emperor with unwavering loyalty, unaware of the manipulation that bound them. Yet their hearts remained noble, guided by ancient customs of respect and gratitude. And from the quiet devotion of this misunderstood people, another delicate thread of loyalty and liberation began to weave itself into the galaxy's story. 80. Thrawn's early calculations. Long before he became a name whispered with awe and apprehension, Mithrav Nuruodo, Thrawn, sharpened his mind in the cold, crystalline halls of the Chiss Ascendancy. He studied art, strategy, and the subtle patterns that revealed a civilization's soul. To him, warfare was not chaos, but a language. One that could be understood, predicted, and shaped with elegant precision. His early ventures into the unknown regions brought him face to face with threats the wider galaxy had never imagined. Each encounter refined his thinking, teaching him to read intention in every brushstroke, every choice of color, every cultural nuance. And from the quiet brilliance of his early years, the foundation of a legendary tactician began to form. 81. The Return of Thrawn. When Thrawn eventually emerged from the shadows of the unknown regions, it felt like a cold wind sweeping through the galaxy. Calm, poised, and unhurried, he took command of Imperial remnants with a grace that contrasted sharply with the desperation around him. His strategies were precise, almost beautiful in their clarity, and many saw in him the potential to restore the Empire's fractured might. Yet Thrawn was guided not by cruelty, but by an unwavering devotion to order, a belief that stability, even under Imperial rule, was better than chaos. His presence felt like the return of something inevitable, a tide that moved with quiet certainty. And from the edge of that rising tide, the next great shift in the New Republic's destiny gently began to unfold. 82. The Dark Empire's Resurgence. Long after the fall of the second Death Star, whispers spread through hidden corners of the galaxy. rumors that the Emperor's shadow had not fully faded. In the cold reaches of the deep core, remnants of Imperial scientists and loyalists worked tirelessly to restore their fallen master. What emerged became known as the Dark Empire, a chilling resurgence guided by cloning, dark rituals, and the unyielding will of Palpatine's spirit. Worlds trembled beneath storms of dark side energy, and familiar battlefields saw the return of Imperial walkers marching beneath crimson skies. Yet even amid this resurgence, hope flickered brightly through the brave resistance of the New Republic. And from these clashing tides of rebirth and defiance, another chapter of cosmic struggle quietly took form. 83. Luke's Jedi Praxium. On the lush moon of Yavin 4, where ancient Masasi temples slumbered beneath thick canopies of green, Luke Skywalker planted the seeds of a new beginning, the Jedi Praxium. His vision was not to rebuild the old order as it once stood, but to nurture a gentler, more intuitive understanding of the Force, one shaped by patience, compassion, and the lessons of past mistakes. Students from countless worlds gathered beneath the shade of vine-covered ruins, practicing meditation, where echoes of ancient chants once lingered. Their days were filled with quiet study, lightsaber practice in forest clearings, and soft reflections under starlit skies. And through the peaceful hum of their training, the next generation of Jedi slowly awakened from centuries of dormancy. 84. The Jedi Academy Trials. Within Luke's Praxium, each student eventually faced their academy trials, tests designed not to measure strength or combat skill, but inner growth. Some trials were simple, long meditations, dialogues with teachers, or journeys to uncover forgotten truths. Others were deeply personal, confronting past fears, healing old wounds, or listening to the subtle currents of the Force that whispered through the temple stones. These trials carried no judgment, only reflection. Success came not through victory, but understanding. Many students emerged changed, their spirits softened by humility and strengthened by wisdom. And from these rites of gentle discovery, the next soft ripple in the New Republic's evolving story begins to shimmer. 85. The Solo Children. Within the peaceful halls of the New Republic, the children of Han Solo and Leia Organa, Jacen, Jaina, and Anakin Solo, grew beneath the watchful warmth of family and the gentle hum of the Force. Each child embodied a different facet of their lineage. Jacen with his deep compassion and curiosity, Jaina with her fiery skill and unwavering determination, and young Anakin with a brilliance that shone like a rising star. Their childhoods were marked by wonder and responsibility in equal measure. They trained as Jedi, piloted starships with youthful excitement, and faced dangers far beyond their years. Yet through it all, their bond remained strong, carrying echoes of the Skywalker legacy into a new era. And from their intertwined destinies, another luminous thread of hope began to unfold. 86. The Knights of the Fallen Empire. Among the legends whispered in the farthest reaches of known space are tales of the Knights of the Fallen Empire, a disciplined and enigmatic order bound to a mysterious ruler who stood apart from both Jedi and Sith. These knights carried themselves with quiet intensity, their armor smooth and unadorned, their blades igniting with a whisper rather than a roar. They lived by strict codes of loyalty and duty, forging a path that blended clarity of purpose with the unpredictability of the Force. To encounter them was to meet warriors who moved like calm tides, precise and emotionless, yet undeniably powerful. And from their poised silence in the shadows, Another story of shifting allegiances began to take shape in the galaxy's distant corners. 87. The Shadow Academy. Hidden among drifting clusters of space debris, the Shadow Academy floated like a dark reflection of Luke's Praxium. Established by Imperial loyalists and dark adherents, it served as a training ground for Force-sensitive youths destined to serve the fragments of the old Empire. Its halls were cold and angular, echoing not with serenity, but with the sharp edge of ambition. Students learned to harness raw power without understanding balance, their lessons shaped by competition rather than compassion. Yet even within its metallic corridors, some trainees felt a quiet longing for something gentler, a sense that the Force held more than dominance. And from the dim glow of that drifting academy, the next faint whisper of destiny softly emerged. 88. The Black Fleet Crisis. In the calm years after the Empire's fall, a quiet unease stirred among the stars as the Black Fleet crisis unfolded. The Yevatha, a reclusive and disciplined species, revealed a fleet of formidable Imperial warships they had seized and mastered. With cold precision, they launched a campaign of expansion, believing themselves destined to dominate the systems around them. Their approach to warfare was ritualistic and unyielding, shaped by a culture that valued absolute order. To the New Republic, this conflict felt like a sudden chill, a stark reminder that even in peacetime, old vessels and old wounds could become catalysts for new storms. And from the tension of that fragile moment, the next ripple of uncertainty drifted across the galactic horizon. 89. The Yevatha Uprising. The heart of the crisis grew darker as the Yevatha enacted what they called the Great Purge, targeting alien populations within their grasp. Their society, rigid and hierarchical, saw non-Yevatha beings as impurities to be eradicated. This ideology turned entire star systems into places of silent fear, where refugees fled in desperate waves toward the protection of the New Republic. Yet amid the cruelty, the galaxy also witnessed extraordinary acts of courage, diplomats risking their lives to negotiate peace, and small resistance groups rising in defiance of oppression. These quiet acts of bravery softened the harshness of the conflict, and from the ashes of the Yevatha's rise, another lesson in compassion and unity gently emerged. 90. The rise of the Yuuzhan Vong Far beyond the Rim, past even the unknown regions. A new threat drifted toward the galaxy like a slow-moving storm. The Yuuzhan Vong, a species untouched by the Force and bound to strange, living technologies. Their arrival began with subtle tremors, harbingers that felt more like omens than invasions. The Vong saw mechanical technology as heretical, choosing instead to grow their weapons, shape their armor, and command starships bred from immense organic forms. Their worldview was defined by pain, ceremony, and unwavering devotion to their gods. To the Jedi, their presence was unsettling, like encountering a silence within the Force itself. And from that approaching void, the next great transformation of the galaxy quietly approached. 91. The Vong War's First Breach. The opening of the Yuuzhan Vong War began not with grand battles, but with a quiet tear in the fabric of space. A breach where living world ships emerged like shadows slipping through a cosmic veil. The first invaded worlds barely understood what was happening before the skies darkened with organic vessels and warriors wearing chitinous armor. The Jedi sensed something unnerving, a hollowness where the Vong should have echoed through the Force. This absence felt like a cold breeze drifting through a sealed chamber, unsettling and unfamiliar. Many in the New Republic hoped the threat would pass quickly. But the breach was only the beginning. And from that silent rift in the stars, the next tremor of galactic upheaval slowly unfurled. 92. The fall of Chewbacca. Among the countless tragedies of the war, none struck the galaxy as deeply as the loss of Chewbacca, loyal friend and towering heart of the Millennium Falcon's crew. On the doomed world of Cern Pedal, he saved countless lives as the moon Merkur hurtled toward the surface, pulled by the unnatural might of the Vong. In his final moments, Chewbacca roared not in fear, but in defiance, a declaration of courage echoing across the windswept landscape. His sacrifice rippled through the hearts of Han Solo, the Solo children, and all who had ever known his gentle strength. And from that sorrowful night beneath a falling moon, the next chapter of grief and resilience quietly began to form. 93. The birth of Jacen's path. The war affected each Jedi differently, but for Jacen Solo, it awakened questions that reached far beyond victory or loss. Captured by the Yuuzhan Vong, he witnessed suffering and transformation that shook his understanding of the Force. In captivity, stripped of comfort and certainty, he searched inward, not for power, but for meaning. These reflections marked the first steps of a journey that would shape his destiny for years to come. Jacen sought a deeper truth, one that lingered in the quiet spaces between pain and compassion, between control and surrender. And from the soft flicker of that emerging philosophy, the next unfolding path slowly illuminated the dark. 94. Vergere's teachings. Among the most enigmatic figures Jacen encountered was Vergere, a former Jedi whose path had diverged into shadowed, winding places. With eyes that shimmered like distant stars and a voice soft as falling rain, she challenged every assumption Jacen held about the Force. To her, the Force was not light or dark, not a tool or a cage. It was a boundless ocean, shaped by intention rather than alignment. Her lessons were riddles, gentle yet unsettling, crafted to unmoor rigid thinking and reveal hidden possibilities. Some found her philosophy dangerous, others liberating. But for Jacen, Vergere became a catalyst, a guide through the long night of doubt, and from the echoes of her paradoxical wisdom, the next transformation of his destiny quietly emerged. 95. The Dark Nest awakens. In the years following the Vong War, a new whisper stirred among the forgotten corners of the galaxy. The Killiks, an ancient insectoid species whose collective consciousness flowed like a single drifting song. Drawn by old wounds and lingering memories, several Jedi, including members of the Solo family, found themselves caught in the soft, hypnotic pull of the dark nest. The Killiks offered belonging, unity, and purpose, their minds intertwining with gentle persistence. Yet their harmony masked deeper tensions, shaped by old conflicts and subtle manipulations. The Jedi who touched the nest felt its warmth and its shadows. From those quiet hives tucked beneath alien trees, another chapter of mystery and awakening slowly unfolded. 96. The Second Galactic Civil War. As the galaxy struggled to heal, new fractures formed, not between empires and rebellions, but within the very heart of the alliance. Old arguments resurfaced, government splintered, and trust unraveled thread by delicate thread. What followed became known as the Second Galactic Civil War, a conflict woven not from hatred, but from fear, exhaustion, and competing visions for the future. Jedi, soldiers, and leaders found themselves pulled into a storm of shifting loyalties, each decision weighed down by lingering grief from the Vong invasion. The war's battles were sharp, but its emotional toll was deeper still. And from that heavy, uncertain dusk, the next shadowed turn of fate quietly took shape. 97. The Fate of Darth Caedus. As Jason Solo's questions deepened and his search for meaning grew more desperate, the quiet reflections of his youth transformed into darker certainties. Guided by pain, prophecy, and a belief that only he could save the galaxy from future suffering, Jason embraced the shadowed mantle of Darth Caedus. His fall was not sudden, but gradual, a series of choices made with trembling hands and troubled heart. Caedus became a paradox, a Sith who genuinely believed he served peace, even as his actions fractured families and ignited new wars. His journey ended in sorrow, confronted by those he loved most. Yet even in his final moments, there lingered a faint whisper of the boy he once was. And from that tragic end, the galaxy learned once more how fragile destiny can be. 98. The Lost Tribe's final stand for centuries, the lost tribe of the Sith had survived in isolation on the world of Kesh, their society shaped by pride, endurance, and a patient hunger for the stars. When they finally emerged into the wider galaxy, they carried with them a legacy frozen in time. Rituals unaltered by millennia, ambitions untouched by the failures of other Sith orders. Their final stand unfolded not in grand arenas, but in quiet confrontations and desperate alliances, as they faced threats far greater than anything their secluded world had prepared them for. In their last moments as a unified force, one could sense the weight of their long journey, a culture striving for relevance in a galaxy that had moved far beyond them. And from the fading echoes of their forgotten empire, another story of rise and fall slipped softly into legend. 99. The Last Jedi of Legends. In the twilight years of the Legends timeline, Luke Skywalker stood as a beacon of calm amid a galaxy reshaped by endless cycles of war and renewal. No longer the wide-eyed farm boy or the uncertain apprentice, he had grown into a quiet guardian, a Jedi master whose wisdom glowed like a steady star. Surrounded by students, allies, and the lingering memories of those who came before, Luke carried the weight of history with gentle resolve. He sought not domination nor rigid doctrine, but harmony, a future where the Force could be understood with openness, humility, and compassion. To many, he became the embodiment of balance, not perfect, but peaceful. And from the soft light of his enduring legacy, one final echo awaits to complete our journey. 100. The Final Echoes. As the vast tapestry of Star Wars legends unfurls into its quietest chapters, the galaxy settles into a gentle hush. Stories once told in fire and storm now drift like stardust through forgotten corridors of time. Heroes, villains, wanderers, and seekers, all their journeys soften into memory, carried by the Force like lanterns floating down a silent river. Though these tales lie outside the canon now, they have never truly faded. They glow in the hearts of those who dreamed among their pages, who felt their warmth, their mystery, their wonder. And as the final echo of legends settles into stillness, it reminds us that no story ever truly ends. It simply becomes part of the quiet chorus that guides us softly into sleep. And as our long voyage through legends comes to rest, may the Force wrap softly around your thoughts, bringing balance to your mind and peace to your dreams. Tonight, we traveled through forgotten empires, ancient mystics, lost wars, and quiet heroes whose stories drift like constellations across a galaxy far, far away. These tales, though old, though whispered, continue to glow in the dark, reminding us that every memory, Every legend is a star that never truly goes out. If these stories helped you drift deeper into the night, please like, subscribe, and share which era of Star Wars you'd love to fall asleep to next. When you're ready to keep dreaming, tap the end screen to follow another gentle journey, another quiet night beneath distant suns, guided by the soft hum of the Force. Rest well, traveler. The Force will guide your dreams.